Hi friends, this is Ketan Thakkar, the Senior Assistant Editor at the Economic Times, tracking the automotive sector. Today we will talk about the factors behind the exit of iconic global brand Ford from the domestic operation. That is the large mass market. They're going to still have presence, but it's going to be niche only at the top end of the market. They've been around for the last 25 years. What really went wrong, and what were the key factors behind this critical, tough call that the company had to take, which is going to lead to thousands of job losses and impact so many livelihoods? So let's dive into it straight away. So the critical factors seen behind this exit are the high cost structure, suboptimal market share in the growing domestic market, which is dominated by Maruti Suzuki and Hyundai, and also struggling exports market, which would have given the company adequate economies of scale to make money in India. The fact of the matter is that Ford management always had India as a critical pillar of its emerging market growth strategy. However, over the last 10 years, as we've seen in India, the economic growth has not been as good as one was expecting, and the resultant automotive growth or passenger vehicle market growth has been quite suboptimal. The last 10 years, the market grew by merely 2 to 3%, whereas the expectation was that the market will grow by strong double digits. Way back in 2014, Ford took a bold call of setting up second factory after the rousing success of EcoSport. So clearly, Ford wanted India to be part of its emerging market growth plans. However, the inability to crack products into the core of the market, which is Maruti Suzuki and Hyundai's mainstay or sub 10 lakh market, with the Figo and Figo Aspire, actually led to a significant downfall for the brand in the Indian market. The company was sitting on 440,000 units capacity. It was operating at less than 60-70% capacity utilization, which had a huge bearing on the cost. And the exports market also, over a period of time, kind of started losing steam. Well, to give credit to Ford, it's not as if they failed miserably in India. I mean, they've had some blockbuster successes in the past as well. I mean, the Ford EcoSport was in a way a segment creator for the sub-4 meter SUVs in India. They had highly successful Ford Figo hatchback as well, which was received very well in India and across the world. The problem was the lack of constant product offering or keeping its product portfolio fresh in the face of competition, which was launching 2 to 3 models every year. So after a success of Figo and EcoSport, there was a big gap. After a success of EcoSport and the new generation Figo and Aspire, there was again a gap. And for the last 5 years, we didn't really see major product offering from Ford in India. And this is in a market where the Indian buyer is wanting to acquire and own what's new and what's best in the market. So the novelty factor around Ford over the last 4-5 years was waning, and hence you saw Ford failing in the domestic market. With the disruption that is coming from Tesla, Apple, and Google, the conventional car makers have doubled down on the investment for electric vehicles for the future. So now when plans for 2020, 2030, the big question is, you have finite resources, return on investment is hard, the global automotive volumes have fallen, and you have to yet compete against the new age disruptors like Tesla, Apple, or Google. So the big question in front of a lot of global automakers, where do you put that finite resource that you have? And in this transition towards EVs, somehow the emerging market like India becomes a big distraction. It's a big market, yet a very hard market to crack, with 70% of the market being dominated by Suzuki and Hyundai. So I think everyone wants to see how this EV transition takes place. Everyone knows that EV transition in India is probably going to be amongst the last, because of the price sensitivity that Indian buyer has, and hence a lot of them have to take this tough call of focusing on their core and focusing on their core domestic market to ensure that they strong stand in front of the competition like Teslas or the other disruptors that we have on the horizon. The Indian market or Indian consumers are always asking for a lot of new products. So how do you, the question with the Ford management was, how do you ensure that the cost is low, and how do you ensure that there are frequent product introduction to ensure that the brand remains relevant to the domestic buyer? And hence in 2017 they took a call that the best way to approach Indian market is through partnership, and that is when they started quoting Mahindra and Mahindra for a future partnership. Eventually, after about a couple of years of rigorous discussion, both the partners decided to get into a joint venture. And then the COVID struck, and all of a sudden the potential plans that they had fell apart, and all of a sudden the future was looking bleak. Indian market was also going through a transition from BS4 to BS6, so that meant that Ford had to invest in future products to meet the future norms, be it on emission or on safety, and it decided to tag along with Mahindra to meet those future norms. Once the partnership conversation fell through at the beginning of this year, Ford had to kick off a very unique India feasibility study. And for a car maker that has been there in India for 25 years, you really do not do a country study per se, but they had to do that. So I think failure of Ford Mahindra JV was also, one could say that, amongst the most critical factors that led to Ford deciding to pull the plug on its Indian operation. The core product portfolio offering of these American car makers is bigger cars, high performance cars meant for evolved markets, which suits well to the economies with higher per capita. So all of a sudden, the product portfolio offering that these American car companies had, a very small part of that was suitable for the emerging markets, and that too they had to kind of underspec and tailor it for the local market, which was way too much of a headache in these times of dynamic disruptions that we are seeing from the IT majors. And hence you had to kind of spend extra and yet struggle to get a sizable market share in the face of intense competition like Maruti Suzuki and Hyundai. It was turning out to be a big distraction. And it's just not Ford and GM alone. I mean, we've seen it with other global makers from Europe and Japan as well. What exactly to do with India? India is amongst the top 5 markets in the world. Per capita is likely to grow. Economy is likely to grow. Car per 1,000 people is still less. So always the promise of this market has been more, but however, it has not really delivered on its promise. So they have a huge Ford Business Center which caters to the global needs of R&D, data, and it's like a global back office for them. Plus, they have engine exports out of India as well, which caters to the larger pickup trucks and SUVs. Exports of engines will continue. Ford Business Center will continue. However, on the local operation front, the manufacturing plants, both of them are going to be shut. The employees will be given their compensation package, or they may be transferred to any other company who acquires those plants. And as far as the dealers go, and which is where the question about the consumer comes, what really happens to the people who have already owned a Ford? So clearly the resale value of the brand is going to fall. So anyone who already owns a Ford of 5 to 7 years, he may not really, or he or she may not really get the resale value as he was desiring. Availability of parts and availability or cost of service, these are another 2 factors which are very critical for existing Ford owners. Company has said that almost all the dealers are on board, but I really do not see the economics behind dealers sustaining or continuing with Ford for a longer period of time. So I think the cost of service, availability of parts, and resale value, these are 3 major factors which is going to be the biggest worry for existing thousands and lakhs of Ford owners at this point in time.